The Speakers also received notice from the First and Deputy First Minister that they wish to make a statement. Before I call the Minister, I would remind members here in the Chamber that in light of social distancing being observed by parties, the Speaker's ruling that members must be in the Chamber to hear a statement if they wish to ask a question has been relaxed. Members participating remotely must make sure that their name is on the speaking list if they wish to be called. Members present in the Chamber can also add their name to the speaking list or indicate by rising in their place, or indeed notify the Speaker's table directly. I remind members to be concise in asking their question. This is not an opportunity for debate, and long introductions will not be allowed. I would also remind members that in accordance with long-established procedures, points of orders are not normally taken during a statement or the question period afterwards. I call the Deputy First Minister.
So I wish to make the following statement on the 35th Summit meeting of the British Irish Council, which took place on Friday the 11th of June 2021. I hope that the Assembly will understand that recent events regarding the position of the First Minister have meant that it has not been possible to make this statement as promptly as is customary following a summit. The summit was hosted by the Executive and was attended by the then First Minister Arlene Foster MLA and myself as Deputy First Minister, as well as Minister Poots, Minister Swan, Minister Mallon, Minister Long, Minister Murphy, Minister Hargey, Junior Minister Kearney and Junior Minister Lyons. They have agreed that I make this statement on their behalf. The Scottish Government delegation was led by Nicola Sturgeon. The Welsh Government delegation was led by Mark Drakeford, the First Minister, who attended virtually. The British Government was led by the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Michael Gove. The Government of Guernsey was led by the Chief Minister, Peter Ferbrache, who attended virtually. Also, the Government of Jersey was led by Senator John Lafondra. The Irish Government was led by Taoiseach Micheál Martin. The Isle of Man Government delegation was led by Howard Quayle, the Chief Minister. And the full list of delegates who attended the summit is attached to the copy of the statement provided to members. This was the first summit to be hosted by the Executive since 2013, and we were delighted to host the meeting in Fermanagh and welcomed the attendance in person by other administrations despite the difficulties imposed by the travel restrictions. The focus of the summit was on recovery from COVID. It's important that, obviously, as we move through recovery, we do so both informed of and learning from the approaches being taken across member administrations. Our engagement in the British Irish Council enables this to happen. Ministers discussed the impact of COVID-19 across member administrations and reflected on the need for approaches to recovery that were sustainable and which addressed the potentially long-lasting impacts. The Council also discussed areas of coherence across member administrations in relation to recovery and in planning for potential future impacts of COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented unprecedented challenges to all of the BIC administrations, as it has globally. Other administrations like us are like us operating and planning for recovery in a still evolving situation as the vaccination programme progresses, but also whilst new variants emerge. All recognise the need to remain alert, flexible and responsive as external factors change around us. A common theme of the members' reports was the way in which the crisis has acted as a driver for change to ways of working, which have created changes in approach which are irreversible. Societies have had to innovate rapidly and positive developments have taken place which may not have occurred without the challenge of combating the impact of the pandemic. To cite a few examples, digital transformation has been essential in the delivery of our public services and is becoming the norm. Sustainability efforts have been enabled through new ways of working, and a greater and very important focus is being placed on the mental health of the population. The summit also discussed the latest political developments across their jurisdictions and noted the recent elections held across a number of administrations. Ministers provided an update and engaged on a number of topics of mutual interest, including the EU-UK relationship. Ministers took the opportunity to reflect on the period since the establishment of the British Irish Council and how the Council had evolved to adapt to a changed context. They welcomed the fact that, despite the pandemic, the British Irish Council had continued to meet by virtual means. Ministers considered a number of potential developments which would further develop the role of the Council in responding to new and emerging trends and challenges, and promoting its objective of positively strengthening links and relationships between the people of these islands. The latest BIC annual report has now been published on the Council's website. Finally, the Council noted the Secretariat's 2021 end-of-year report and welcomed the publication of the Council's annual report for 2021. The next summit will be hosted by the Welsh Government later this year. So, Ceann Comhairle, I commend this statement to the Assembly.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Joint First Minister for her statement. And I welcome the fact that the British-Irish Council meeting took place, albeit in difficult circumstances. It is really important that everyone working for people and in communities right across these islands is given the opportunity to come together to discuss matters of common interest and to share ideas and practice that will help develop the work that we do. The issue of COVID recovery was high on the agenda, but obviously the matter of COVID is still very much on the minds of people. People are still worried about the virus, and the numbers that we are hearing over the past week are very worrying. There is some comfort in the fact that hospital admissions and serious illness from the virus is not translating into intensive care admissions yet, but the key word is yet. Now, Bonkers Boris has announced yesterday that he intends to relax many of the key relaxations and regulations that are in place in England, and this has been done in the face of many of the scientific facts. Even his most senior advisers suggest that they will continue to wear masks in crowded environments, whilst telling everyone else that they don't have to and that it's a choice.
Can I remind the member it's an opportunity to ask questions?
Yes, thank you, and also what is afforded to chairs of committee to make a few introductory remarks.
As I have done
so what does this mean? The Chief Medical and Scientific Officer will still wear the masks, but everyone else is okay. That type of mixed messaging is ludicrous. Can the Minister detail to us what discussions there were at the summit and since about the different paces of relaxation to COVID, and whether or not the different pace in GB and the island of Ireland will have any impact upon people here? Thank you.
Well, thanks to the Chair of the Committee for his question, and I think you're right to reflect that people are still worried about the pandemic, and they are still worried about the fact that with the new variant, in particular with the Delta variant now becoming our dominant strain, people are right to be cautious, people are right to be anxious. I think we have to always point to the positive. The positive is that the vaccination programme is rolling out very, very well, and we need to continue to see the uptake, and I encourage all members to use their good office to try to promote the uptake of the vaccine, because that's our best defence. Boris Johnson has made announcements yesterday, and as I noted in the statement, throughout the pandemic, all member administrations of BIC have at different times been in different positions and taken different paths. Certainly, we prided ourselves on taking our own path. That remains the case, taking our own path based on our own information, advised by our own Chief Medical Officer and Chief Scientific Advisor. Certainly, I think that in terms of the announcement yesterday, I personally, my view is that that's far too soon. Albeit, we want to keep making progress and we want to keep lifting the restrictions where we can. So, our executive will meet this Thursday, and our executive will decide collectively around what is our next step. But certainly, and particularly in relation to the issue of masks that you referred to, I think the Health Minister and the Chief Medical Officer have been very clear in saying that we're not there yet, and I think that's going to be, obviously that's going to be up for discussion on Thursday, but certainly I would be supportive of that view. Look, we want to keep making progress, but the best way we can do that is just keep being steady, continually making the progress, getting a maximum number of people vaccinated. So again, I'll keep repeating the message that please encourage people to come forward and take up the vaccination.
I call George Robinson.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Could I ask the Minister if she will provide an update on the current ongoing work of the Council?
Yeah, so I think it was useful that we're able to meet in person at this time, and one of the things that we're able to have a very frank conversation around where we're all at with the COVID crisis, but we're very much looking towards the future as well and how else we can work together. There's as I said, there's been 4 virtual ministerial meetings, including a joint housing and collaborative spatial planning meeting held recently, and the housing and collaborative spatial planning work sectors are chaired by our executive colleagues, so there's a lot of work going on there. There's also a lot of work around misuse of substances, and that work sector is going to be renamed drugs and alcohol, so there's a lot of work going there. There's a lot of conversation and work being done around a review of actually how we work, and it's going to be taken forward a very much a different approach, like a task and finish approach, so it should allow us to be able to look at areas where we can collectively work and be able to find ways to do things perhaps better and more speedily. So across a whole range of things, creative industries, digital inclusion, drugs and alcohol, early years, energy, environment, housing, social inclusion, Indigenous, minority and lesser used languages, transport. That's I think that notes the 11 live work sectors which we have, but there's a lot of work being done around the future of the Council and how we can work more collaboratively and share information where that's advantageous, I suppose, to us all.
I call Pat Sheehan.
Agus buchas leis an ara suck the righteous imagine. I thank the Joint First Minister for her statement this morning. And could I ask the Minister if she has any concerns about the delivery arrangements for the Levelling Up Fund and the Shared Prosperity Fund?
Well, yes, I do indeed, and I think that the delivery arrangements for the Levelling Up Fund and Shared Prosperity Fund pilot programme, it cuts across the responsibilities of a number of executive departments. So the executive continues to consider the impact of the loss of EU funding and the approach to replacements in Whitehall departments. It's very clear that the British Government intends to use the financial assistance powers in the Internal Market Act to deliver those funds intended as EU replacements, and also funding streams where we would have expected to receive Barnett allocations. So I think this approach directly bypasses the devolved structure. So it is a matter of concern that the Westminster Government approach clearly doesn't build on existing and well-established structures that we have in line with the Executive's agreed position, or nor does it give the Executive or our Ministers the normal role that they would have had in relation to devolved functions. So I think it's a matter of concern that they are to be financed, in the case of the Level Up Fund that you refer to, using spending power that was promised to us in the spending review, or for the Shared Prosperity Fund as a replacement for our income from EU programmes. So I think urgent clarification is required to ensure the effective delivery of this funding locally, and it's essential that the Executive's reviews and the Executive spending priorities are taken into consideration in the delivery of these funds to ensure that there is maximum benefit and delivery from the support that's provided.
I call John Stewart.
Deputy Speaker, and thank the Deputy First Minister for her statement and answers so far. You refer in the statement to difficulties of attendees in relation to travel. I'm just wondering, was there any discussion around when we're going to see an end to the inconsistencies and inequality within the common travel area, particularly GB to the Republic of Ireland? And does she agree that the current travel rules are surprising, potentially outdated, given that the Republic of Ireland has consistently had a much higher infection rate than Northern Ireland over the past 6 months?
I think the issue of travel was touched upon, and it continues to be touched upon, because we are different spaces and our different places, even in terms of the virus spread, and that's been the case the whole way through the pandemic. So I don't think the members should get too excited that if the South of Ireland's cases are higher than ours at the moment, or vice versa, because at different times we were the best in Europe, and those times we were the worst. So I just think that it's important that we work together, that we finally see the resolution to the travel issue, particularly the travel locator forms, which has been ongoing for some time. It's something that we've encouraged for there to be a resolution to. I think progress has been made there, but I think that as we move forward and travel starts to open up, and that seems to be the direction of travel across the board, excuse the pun, but I think as we move forward, it's as important that we are as aligned as we can be across these islands, and I've always advocated that two-island approach, and I think that's the best way. It makes it simpler for people to understand. There's no confliction of messaging, for example. So I would like us to be as aligned as we can in terms of travel, and whether it's within the common travel area or as we start to see international travel opened up as well.
I call Stuart Dixon.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy First Minister. Deputy First Minister, given the quite frankly offensive and unnecessary remark by the Member of Parliament for East Antrim yesterday about our Health Minister, can you tell us what work was done in your Council meeting with regards to harmonising restrictions across all of the jurisdictions, and what actions you're taking to expand the green list for travellers?
So as I said, travel was discussed at the meeting, but again, each administration is coming at this with their own data as well and their own information, and taking decisions based on what they think is in the best interest of their people at that time. But I do think the better aligned we can be, the better it will be for all of us to understand, and for the public at large to understand. the comments in relation to the Health Minister. The Health Minister has a very, very difficult job and a very, very difficult time, and he deserves to have the support of the Executive and of other MLAs who, quite frankly, until you're in his shoes, you wouldn't understand the level of the decisions that have had to be taken. So I think that people should be very focused on recovery, which is what the public want, taking decisions to try to move the restrictions as quickly as we can, getting people back to some sense of normality as quickly as we can, and just trying to focus very much on recovery, because so many people have lost their jobs. The economic consequences of the pandemic are dire, and we have a big job of work to do, and we should be focused on working together to do that, as opposed to taking pop shots at the Health Minister or anybody else for that matter.
I call Christopher Stalford.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm looking at the list of ministerial delegates at this event in Fermanagh, and it includes the Taoiseach Micheál Martin, his deputy, Mr Leo Varadkar, and the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr Simon Coveney. The event was held in Fermanagh, and presumably they were able to cross our border to attend it. If the Minister was listening to Rudy Walster this morning, she will have heard the story of a Northern Ireland family who have been effectively placed under house arrest in the Republic of Ireland. Has the issue of the Irish Government providing the necessary information to those arriving in Dublin and travelling on to Northern Ireland been satisfactorily resolved? For it is a ridiculous situation where Irish Government ministers are able to cross our border, but Northern Ireland citizens are not.
So can I say that in terms of the family situation, it's just been brought to my attention. I didn't hear it on the radio, but it's just been brought to my attention before I came into the chamber, and obviously we'll work to try to get a resolution to that family, who I believe have issues with young children at home, and also perhaps sickness as well in one of the individuals. So I hope that there's a speedy resolution to that. Again, it's back to what I've said previously. I mean, I think it's important that we share information, we share data, that people are very clear around the travel limitations or otherwise, that people are very clear around the testing policy, that people are very clear around the information. So that falls upon the two health ministers and the two chief medical officers to make that as simple as possible. I welcome the fact that there was a meeting last week, I believe, of the two chief medical officers, and I hope to continue to see progress around the issue of sharing data and making sure that we are as joined up as we can be in this period. I mean, that's in all of the public's interest, all the people who live on this island, and indeed those people that are travelling right across the common travel area.
I call Emma Sheeran.
And I thank the Joint Minister for her answers thus far. I note that the BAC was COVID focused, which created opportunities for discussion on its impact and its recovery, and a good platform for sharing of information. Given the scale of the challenges facing our health and social care services, including the crisis in waiting lists, the problems facing families when they're trying to access packages of domiciliary care, and the ongoing fight against COVID-19, would the Joint Minister agree that these issues transcend party politics, and that a health summit involving all executive parties should now be called to agreed an urgent and joint response?
Thanks. I mean, absolutely, I do agree. And as a former health minister, I'm very aware of the challenges facing the health and social care system that was already stretched due to Tory austerity over many, many years. But then the pandemic has obviously very much heightened those challenges. So I think, as I said, addressing all of that in ordinary times would be difficult enough. But facing with the pandemic, the growing waiting list situation, I think it's clear that we do need that very urgent and unified approach to tackling the issue of waiting lists and making sure that people get access to healthcare as and when they need it. So I do welcome the recent initiative by the Health Minister around the waiting list and bringing forward mechanisms in which to deal with the waiting list situation, including using all-island healthcare. I think it's a practical sense, it makes sense, it's evidence that positive outcomes can be achieved whenever you work together. So I think hosting our own Executive Health Summit would certainly be a very positive step forward, and I certainly look forward to that discussion, because I do think it's going to take heavy lifting in all of our parts to be able to turn this situation around, because it's simply, it's atrocious actually. The waiting list situation at this moment in time is atrocious, and we have to collectively fix that.
I call Diane Dodds.
Can I thank the member for her comments so far. During the meeting at the BIC, the Foreign Minister of the Irish Republic took the opportunity to state his views on the protocol. Would the Minister, who quite rightfully did not respond to him in this forum, indicate whether or not she thought this was an appropriate use of this particular forum, and that really he would be better keeping his views to himself in places where they are not appropriate.
Well, I think that the member is right. Minister Simon Coveney and maybe the Taoiseach as well also raised the issue of the protocol, and rightly so. They were speaking about current political developments, so it would be to ignore the elephant in the room for it not to be mentioned at a summit of this nature, given the implications that Brexit has on our people, on our economy, and I think on wider society. So I think it was appropriate that it was discussed there. And you know, the member may wish to shake her head. However, we wouldn't have a protocol today if we didn't have Brexit, which you and your party ably championed.
I call Martina Anderson.
Las can colia agus breakus les anara sto righteous. I want to thank the Minister for her statement. Minister, even Minister Michael Gove has said that the challenges that are in front of us because of the protocol can be resolved. So do you agree that the focus now needs to shift to maximise the opportunities and minimise the challenges for our businesses so that they can enjoy the kind of access that we have now to the numerous markets like the British markets, the EU market and the rest of the world, and having such access really enables us to mitigate some of the worst impacts and effects of Brexit?
Again, this question is beyond the statement, but again the Minister may wish to respond.
It was referred to in so far as it came up under current political issues, so I will address it given that I addressed the previous member's question on it, and it doesn't come as any surprise to the member who's asked the question that the disruption and the difficulty that we're experiencing presently is a direct result of Brexit, the hardest possible Brexit, and a Brexit that was rejected by the majority of people in this Assembly. So for those that, referring to my previous answer, for those that champion Brexit, I think they need to own some of the economic consequences and the uncertainty that has flowed from that. However, I think our collective effort and focus now needs to be on protecting jobs and livelihoods. And as the member knows, the protocol is our only protection against the hardest possible Brexit and the worst excesses of Brexit. Businesses want the protocol to work. They want solutions to the challenges that we face. And in my view, there are solutions to be found, and they're to be found via the Joint Committee. The CBI have recently acknowledged that for many businesses, the protocol is already working and presents an exciting opportunity in many ways. So all of our collective effort needs to be to minimise, as you say, the challenges and maximise the opportunities. Let's make the protocol work smoothly and give our manufacturing, our agri-food, our food processing, all other businesses the certainty and stability that they require to take advantage of what is the dual market access that's now available to them.
I call Matthew O'Toole.
Deputy Speaker, Minister, Brexit has damaged relationships on this island and between both Britain and the island of Ireland. Given that many in this chamber have focused on what they see as the damage done to East-West relationships, isn't it the case that given the British-Irish Council is literally the first item on Strand 3 of the Good Friday Agreement, that it is precisely the forum for these issues to be discussed and raised, and was there a specific work stream agreed in terms of mitigating some of the outworkings of Brexit and, yes, maximising the opportunities for all the people of these islands?
I thank the member that the summit itself was focused on COVID, so that was the main topic of the conversation. But of course, this is the natural forum in which to have these conversations. I mean, when we talk about the Good Friday Agreement, we talk about the totality of relationships. And it is about relationships, it is about having the honest conversations, and the British-Irish Council, the North-South Ministerial Council, and this chamber itself is the very place where we should be having these discussions. So I don't think it should be as any surprise to anybody that that the summit actually took the time to have albeit a briefer conversation on this issue. But I've no doubt that we're going to have to come back to a lot more conversation in the next format, which is going to happen later this year in Wales, and there'll be an opportunity again for us to speak about the current political situation of the day, including, I'm sure, the issue of Brexit will still be on the agenda.
I call Anya Murphy.
The pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on many sectors of our society who were already disadvantaged, including children, young people, women and those on low incomes with disabilities. Can the Joint First Minister confirm that building a better and fairer society will be core to recovery?
Garmagat Lashkan Corlia, and welcome to Anya to the new MLA for Fermanagh South Tyrone. Second day in the role, and I want to wish you the very, very best and welcome you to our team. And I've no doubt that you're going to be a champion for the people of Fermanagh South Tyrone, and just want to wish you the very best in your role. I think you might actually be our youngest MLA. Somebody else might correct me on that, but I think you possibly are. So it's very important that the interests of young people are also reflected in this chamber. So congratulations and good luck. And I agree with you in terms of your question around the need to tackle the high levels of poverty, inequality and disadvantage that it exists across our communities, and it has to be to the core of our approach to recovery. I'm also particularly aware that the social and economic impact of the pandemic has fallen so hard on women, and we've talked about it on a number of occasions in this chamber. Many of these women are in low-paid, precarious employment, and whilst many others have lost their jobs. So I think as we step out of the restrictions, we must develop more sustainable and strategic responses that at their core break those endless cycles of poverty and of exclusion and of inequality. So I think that looking after the most vulnerable, the lonely, those in housing need, those in poverty and families with a disability, and those with a disability and workers on low incomes must be core to the recovery strategy. So that's going to mean that we do things differently, and quite often we do things more effectively. So work has been ongoing to develop the draft integrated recovery plan, and it's focused on delivery over the next 24 months. And there's 4 main areas, and that's economic growth, tackling inequalities, health of the population and green growth and sustainability. So that's going to be a longer term strategic approach, and it'll incorporate in the programme for government and the work we're doing there also. So I think there's a lot to be done, but certainly I think the action and the recovery plan will identify the opportunities that can be ambitious about, as I say, breaking those longer term cycles of poverty and exclusion.
I call Jim Allister.
So it turns out that the protocol was discussed and raised by the Dublin government. Why was that concealed from this House in this statement, where there's a statutory duty to report the goings-on of these councils to the House? And if it was raised, did no unionist minister raise the economic dislocation being caused by the protocol? And if they did, why have we not heard about that? And if they didn't?
I think there's a number of questions there.
Well, I think, Mr. Speaker, we're in a strange circumstance.
Order. I have allowed the member to ask a number of questions. Minister.
And towards the end of the statement, it says the summit also discussed the latest political developments across their jurisdictions. So that would obviously include political developments around Brexit and the protocol. Absolutely.
Order.
Absolutely, obviously, because it is a recent political development.
Order. Allow the Minister to speak, please. Minister.
I would encourage the member to read a statement.
And that is the end of our period of questions. Point of orders, Mr. Allister.
Mr. Speaker, Section 52C of the Northern Ireland Act is very clear that following meetings such as this, there shall be a report to this House of the goings-on at those meetings. We had a circumstance this morning where a statement was produced which concealed the very fact that the protocol was even discussed. The word protocol isn't mentioned. Is it in order? Is it compliant with Section 52 for a minister to come to this House and conceal from this House a relevant aspect of the proceedings upon which she is allegedly reporting? Is that in order?
It's clear from the answers that there was discussion on this issue. I will pass the matter to the Speaker's office to make a declaration on it and to determine if anything needs to go forward. The member has rightly raised the matter and put it on the record. I now ask members to take their ease for a few moments until the next item of business.